Yeah. So, I'm one of those people that I've had a lot of really cool life experiences. And right when I was 18 years old, I was selected in the US Air Force to be a cryptologist, and was given a SCI, SBI top secret clearance. So at the age of 18 and 19 and 20 years old, I was dealing with the secrets of our country. I think that was pretty interesting. And I've been through advertising, and my whole love of life really, or my career, has been high technology. So I've been a technology manager, project manager. So I'm just a regular Joe. And but I'm interested in science. I've always been interested in astronomy, and quite frankly, I've always been interested in paranormal topics. Any paranormal topic, I'm interested in anything that's in that genre. Always been fascinated with it. And I just started to notice some things last summer in June, that I didn't think looked right. And so I started to do some of my own observations and made a lot of really big mistakes with lens flares. And I've had my friends tell me I'm crazy and all kinds of things. But at the end of the day, what started to happen was, as I absorbed more information about this subject, I became more and more concerned because I could see that nobody was really addressing it, nobody was talking about it. So my family convinced me to leave it alone, honestly, from about June to November of 2015. In the interim, I was listening to people like Bob Fletcher, Sitchin, all the usual suspects, Marshall Masters, people like that, Zeta Talk. I mean, there's a lot of material out there about this subject. So I just kind of absorbed, and I couldn't get enough of it in my free time. I just started to learn as much as I could. I think I probably have 1,200 hours of study into it right now. Since,
Nice.
yeah. And what I've come to conclude is that, um, it's an easy thing to get hyped up about. It's an easy thing to get deceived by. Um, this is a big universe, right? And this is a big solar system. We expect, because we see a planet come in 2011, 2008, or whenever they say this system came in, that it's just going to show up tomorrow. And that's just not what space is. Think about how long it takes for us to send a person to Mars. We're
Right.
talking about a 6 month journey to get to the closest planet to us, one of the closest planets or bodies. Well, how long is it going to take a star that's coming in and putting the brakes on, going to perihelion, and coming back out, right? That might take a couple of years. And that's exactly what I think has been happening. So when they saw the system come in, and lots of evidence, of that, I'll show you one example, just one very small example from 2012 that I captured to show you that a system did indeed blow through here at a high speed. A lot of people saw lots of evidence of it, and then it disappeared because it had to finish its arc. It had to finish its energy and start turning around and coming back the other way.
Is that what we're looking at right now?
That's exactly what I think we're looking at. So this is from the eclipse, and there was a lot of fanfare about the eclipse and this Alaskan air flight that, basically the pilot was very kind to let everybody take photographs. One of my WSO contacts were in there in that group. And so they were excited, and, in the community, were excited to share this photograph. This is not one that made it onto the mainstream news, let me tell you that right now. What we're seeing is an eclipse, and, probably a little bit of a flare right above the sun, although that could be an object. But the small dot and the larger dot there, that's a common shape that we see with this system. And when the Nibiru researchers saw this, and the Wormwood researchers, we all saw this in our community, we knew that we had captured something interesting. Um, do you mind if I pass on to another photograph?
That'd be great. And while you're doing that, I just want to bring up to maybe somebody that is skeptical or hasn't done a whole lot of research on Planet X and Nibiru. I myself am neutral on the topic as much as possible, although there are so many compelling possibilities. For example, if you type in mainstream news admits Planet X on Google, or MSNBC admits Planet X, NBC, Fox News, this is what comes up. A new ninth planet may have been discovered. NBC News. Far out, astronomers say two unknown planets may lurk at the edge of the solar system. NBC News. How scientists possibly found the ninth planet in the solar system. NBC, Fox News, Disclose TV. I mean, there's so much out there now that's pointing to this possibility. Here's another one, MSNBC, another planet possibly. So I just want to bring that up, and thank you for showing us these pictures. I really appreciate it.
Oh, no problem. And see, this is the key idea that I think that why people are responding well to the channel. I think there are two reasons actually. Number one, I'm not doing this myself. Okay, I literally have 14,000 investigators right now working together side by side with me. Okay,
And
and
you're making millions of dollars doing this, aren't you?
oh God, yeah, I'm making a whole ton of money. No, actually, I don't. I don't sell anything. Nothing is going to ever be sold. I'll give you an example. We're trying to do a balloon, our own balloon launch, and we're trying to do it in several locations around the globe with the WSA network, or WSO network. And so we're getting that project going, and and just people are just very responsive to that type of thing. So
That's great. And I just said that facetiously because it seems like this topic in general gets, at least on my channel, trolled more than anything else. And we certainly get into discussions a lot more controversial than the possibility of a ninth planet. So I just find that interesting that there's so many attacks towards the possibility of Nibiru, and they're not even good ones. They're just all capital letters, F off, you're an effing idiot, go F yourself, stuff like that. It's just not even logical. So it makes me think that there might possibly be paid shills out there to just kind of divert attention. And I do think there's a lot of people out there that certainly feel that Nibiru is not real, but what are your thoughts on that?
yeah, so there's a lot of discussion in the community about this. By the way, all the researchers that I work with, we all face a lot of cyber resistance. There's two types of cyber resistance we face. The first one is based on algorithmic types of things. So basically, we've got some organization we know is actually out there sniffing for words like Nibiru or wormwood or things like that. So I'll give your listeners a little tip. Try to upload something with the name wormwood or Nibiru or Planet X in it. Just do like a 5-second video. Just go Nibiru, 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 wormwood, wormwood, and then just label it that. See how long it takes to upload on YouTube. I'll see you in the morning.
Right.
So we
That's
know that there's
interesting.
algorithmic things looking for keywords to slow down, the passing around of this information. And then the second thing you mentioned were the trolls. Dude, these guys are organized, brutal. So what they do, that I'll even block many of them, but they have workarounds, and they'll chase my subscribers around and say, "Why are you listening to this? Why are you considering this even as a possibility?" and trying to make them feel stupid and things. The second thing they try to do is provoke you to fire back something that will violate YouTube rules, which I refuse to do. I will not swear. I mean, once in a while, a little swear word will pop out just because I'll see something and I'll go, "Holy crap," or whatever, right? But for the most part, I demand politeness, and I demand, that there's no insulting. So with that policy on my channel is very consistent with YouTube. But when you get provoked by one of them and they're experts at it, they'll get you kicked off of services because you'll fight back. It's kind of like in a football game. It's not the first person who pushes, it's always the second person who pushes that gets the flag. You know what I mean?
Sure.
And they know that. So what you have to do is, and what I'm teaching my subscribers and my listeners is ignore them. Just completely ignore them. That's the best policy. It really is.
That makes sense because if they're really good at psychology and then they can find out what, clicks, what makes you upset, what's going to cause you to respond back to them, and then they can take that and use it against you. So I'm really glad that you brought that up for our listeners. And you're an expert with cybersecurity as well, correct?
That is correct. That's my current profession. That's how I make my living. I don't sell books. I don't, try to sell any of this stuff. I get my ads on YouTube, and that's it, right? And that barely covers my costs at all for this effort. So I'm losing a lot of money from this, but I really don't care because I really am a big believer in the karmic principles too. That if you do good and you try to plant good seeds and you try to be a good person, that that you'll reap those rewards someday. And I really
That's
believe that.
awesome.
Yeah. And so I'm just trying to inform people because in my heart, and I'll tell you the story when we get into some of these other images tonight, but when I first saw some of the more amazing images from the All Sky Cam network, which is basically www.allskycam.com. These are observatory mounted cameras all over the world. And these cameras have been an amazing source of information. Of course, they're vilified by the trolls and by the people that are trying to oppose the information. Anything that we get data from that gets vilified. So all Skycam is automatically bad. But in fact, we've gotten some amazing images from All Skycam Network, and that's one of the places I went when I was first being, kind of converted to thinking that this might be real. That's where I got some of the evidence that pushed me over. And I'm going to show you an image tonight that really shocked me. Then I just used some deductive logic and I said, well, if I'm seeing this, it was an image from an Australian Skycam. And it was brutal. I mean, it was like, what? WTF, big time. And then I just logically, I thought, well, there's got to be a Skycam in the South Pole somewhere where I can validate this or see a second point of view. Sure enough, I find the Australian, South Pole Expedition Skycam. Pull it up, and I'll show you the photo from tonight. I'll show you tonight some of the things that we saw there. In fact, why don't we jump into some of this? Because when I saw that South Pole image, I looked over at my wife and I said, it's real, it's happening. That's what pushed me over the top.
Okay, and before we do, just the one we're looking at now, it looks like this image was inverted.
No, this actually is not an inverted photo. This is actually an eclipse photo.
Okay.
Done by a photographer.
Wow, that's fantastic. So, and I'm trying to think of a way to ask this the right way. How do you confirm that that isn't just some type of, something on the lens or?
Well, that's the second point I was going to make about the success of my site is that we never rely on one image and we never look at, everybody on the whole network of subscribers and commenters, we tend to say, okay, we want to look at this from 4 or 5 different perspectives. The word corroborate is very important in my channel, okay? So I'll show you this image, but you know what? I also showed you this image, okay? So that's 2 images of the eclipse that shows me that something might not be right. And I don't say this is conclusive evidence. But then I go to Soho, and now this is an inverted image just to see it more clearly.
Okay.
This is one that was just recently being passed around, and it was a big hubbub in the research community because they accidentally let one off in Soho where we could actually see some type of reflection or refraction of an object in it.
Yeah.
Then you might go to this and say, oh, well, if that thing's sitting behind the sun and I'm in the southern hemisphere, maybe I could see it from webcams to Mexico. Sure enough, I go there. I look at this time of the day. I'm sorry I cut off the date up here. This was actually from a couple days ago. And I will show you right now what happened today at the same webcam. But we are clearly seeing an illuminated object in the sky here. And I'm going to zoom in on it for a second, and I'm going to show you something. It's not just illuminated, it's multicolored. I'll try to show you the multicolored. It's like almost a plasma, what you would expect to see in a plasma charge. So the theory is that as this star came back into our solar system, as it made its loop back in again, that now we don't have just momentum, velocity, force, those kinds of things, but now we're also dealing with electric universe principles, and the sun and this object may be in some kind of a struggle or fight, if you will. So we've got the opposing forces of momentum and planetary motion combined with the forces of magnetics, which are repulse and attract, those kinds of things, right?
Sure.
So we don't know where this thing is moving or where it's going, but we're getting a lot of pictures of it, right? So there's corroboration point 2, a webcam. Then I go, and all over the world now we're seeing this strange red halo. In fact, I will tell your listeners, this is one thing you can see yourself. It's not going to be visible every day. It depends on the amount of chemtrailing. We'll talk about that in a minute. And it depends on other factors like, how many clouds are in the sky. I've seen this in my own backyard looking up in the sky at least 6 times. This photograph, I think, is from Canada. I just got 2 photographs from Portugal, Spain, just today that's going to go on my next broadcast. And this big bubble here, I'm very concerned about it. because when you see a solar system approaching you, especially one that's said to have this cloud of iron oxide dust around it, that's what they say Wormwood Nibiru Planet X has around it.
Okay.
You would not expect to see random traces of dust coming at you. You might see some trace dust, things like that. It's going to come to you in a circle. It's going to come at you like a bubble, and it's going to this system will literally envelop our system, and that is what I believe why we're seeing this sick halo in the sky. And trust me when I tell you, when you start watching for this kind of stuff, you will notice chemtrailing, and you will notice that they are totally trying to cover this up. It is so obvious. And so that's a disturbing image, and that's a disturbing idea I just relayed. But that's the kind of thing that I'd want to corroborate. I'd want to say, well, is it going to come at me in some kind of a random way, or am I going to see a big bubble come at me? Well, if you look at what the Hopi Indians said, and you look at what the Egyptians said in the Colburn texts, they say it comes at you just like this. This is what it looks like. All right, corroboration.
Fascinating.
There it is again in another place, right?
Oh yeah, look at that. Well, let me ask you this though, because I remember I've seen this many times with the moon where there's that just amazing halo. I saw it the other night. I remember one time in particular in the Northwest when I lived close to Seattle, Washington. This would have been back in 2005. There was just this amazing halo around the moon, similar to what we're seeing around the sun. So, um, what does that mean?
All right, so one of the things that we theorize, and again, I'm careful to try to say theorize. I'm very careful to say I think, I believe, this is my theory, this is my hypothesis, because truly, we don't have enough data in the public to make any kind of declarative statements, in my opinion. The only people that know about this are the powers that be in this world. That's what I believe. And the reason that they can pull off this global chemtrailing hiding of the system is because there is some kind of worldwide cabal dealing with this. Now, are they chemtrailing to protect us from evil rays, or are they trying to cover it up and hide us? Are they trying to maybe deflect some of the energy from it? Who knows? I don't. But they're not telling us. And I can tell you literally every major city in the world, and I have pictures from every continent, will show heavy chemtrailing at the beginning of the day when the sun is coming up and when the sun is going down. And so when you start to see this again and again and again, and the evidence is pouring in, it causes you to say, oh, there's another data point, right?
Sure.
Then you go and say, okay, well, okay, that was one webcam in Mexico. Let's go see if we can find this on another webcam. Sure enough, there it is again. See the colors of it?
It looks, yeah, it looks the same as the other picture. Yeah.
It does.
Uh-huh.
It does. Right? So now I'm corroborating more. And that's, again, this is the key to the success of my channel. We don't just rely on one piece of evidence. Then we reversed it out and, of course, took some closer looks at it. And then I go to a third camera yet in Mexico, and this is in Leon, and there it is again.
Wow. Same shape, different color. It's more red in this picture.
And it really depends on how much atmospheric, and you can see that we have a really big pollution problem in several areas of Mexico. And so I only explain the different colors because it's primarily just pollution.
Okay. And also maybe a lot of that's from the chemtrail spraying too when it kind of starts to settle. I remember in Colorado Springs back in 2013 they were spraying so bad that with my polarized sunglasses that I had on, you could see these nanoparticulates dropping to the ground. And I was walking with a couple friends of mine. I gave them the sunglasses and they saw the exact same thing. It blew them away.
Yeah, here I'm going to pull up an image and show you something I showed on my channel just the other day. Because see this camera right here in Leon?
Yeah.
I'm gonna just pull up a different Leon picture from yesterday. See any difference?
Well, I mean, different time of day.
It's completely obfuscated by chemtrails. That's a clear day in Leon. That's a day that they feel threatened.
I see.
Okay.
And
So
you can tell
when
by the kind of the checkerboard patterns, the streaks, the cloud streaks.
or and again, you can match these up for different times of the day. But another thing you say, well, if they're airline contrails or Well, I just had a gal testify to me 2 days ago, and I put it on my channel. Airline attendant that was actually briefed that we are adding additives to the fuel. This is why we're doing it. Some of your planes will get little nozzles. This is what we're doing. And they explained it to her. And she thought it was for the common good because they were going to, help with EMP attacks. You can go look at my last video. It's actually all there. The fact that she brought me that is the other success point, is that people that are afraid, I'm telling you, they're so afraid. They're so afraid to show anybody what they found. And I'm trying to provide a place where I put myself out there. I don't care. I'm not making any money. I'm not doing this for glory. Listen to me. I had no expectations of this site. I just wanted to put truth out there and see if I could get feedback. And what ended up happening was all these people that were frustrated with not being able to talk about it or share their experiences now have a place to do an outlet. And that's why we're successful.
Now, how far do you think this is going to get to destruction? I mean, do you think that it's going to get to the point of biblical Armageddon, or what's your take?
Yeah, so, there's so many different theories on this thing, but I take the Christian eschatological, I can't pronounce it, eschatology view, right? I don't buy into the fundamentalist view of it, though. I basically think that there was warnings and revelation about this in John's voice, kind of. And it basically was just a forewarning that this happens. And we have the Sumerians and the Egyptians and a lot of cultures around the world that have told us that this happens. And I'm not blaming the universe or God or the devil or anything. This is just a solar system or a astral phenomenon. Sometimes bodies come into contact with each other. Sometimes there are collisions. Sometimes there are interactions. If you look really close at Mars, for example, and you see that big gash on the side of Mars, that big humongous like
Yeah.
scar, go check out the Thunderbolt project, and they actually make a theory that it came too close to another body, and in so doing, a discharge happened between Mars and this other body that basically just fried that big gash on the side of Mars. So we know that our solar system has run into stuff before. We know, for example, if you look at any of the Graham Hancock work or people like that, they're very interested in the fact that we see these regular cataclysms on the Earth. They would say that they happen about every 12,000 years, right? And that we're due for another one. But everybody points to Noah's flood as a time that this came through as a very potentially reasonable reason why there was a worldwide flood that literally every surviving culture wrote about and was traumatized by, right? So there's a common trauma in the human spirit. We all are fascinated with Armageddon. I don't care who you are. When you start talking about, is this the end of the world? I mean, people just perk up and think about it. Why is that? Do you think that we've been through this before as a race, as a culture? I don't know. Right?
Well, I mean, it's that and the fight and flight mode. And, you're either, when you're worried about this giant cataclysm, subconsciously, even if you aren't consciously going to be concerned, it's going to affect you and it can take you into that mode.
Correct. All right. So I wanted to show you another one. So one of the big things that we get a lot is you don't have any astronomers working with you. That's not true with WSO. We have astronomers and more all the time. We have one binary star astrophysicist that is very reluctant to talk to us about this because he's afraid, literally afraid for his life. Okay.
Did he
But
say by who?
I don't know, honestly. People are afraid to talk about this if they are in the industry, if they're in any kind of serious study of space. I'll give you an example. One of the contacts is through a second contact that I'm in contact with an astronomer in New Zealand, who obviously has the opportunity to look at this stuff, right? And when we approach him, I and my partner that's friends with him, when we approach him to look at something that we're doing or to get his feedback, he just says, nonsense, hogwash. It's almost like a violent, vehement, just shut up and don't talk about it anymore. Just put it away, Steve. Just don't, you know? It's almost like they're trying to warn me off. And that makes me want to go deeper because that's the way I am. So we actually had this guy down in Australia, an amateur, that had rigged up a telescope to look at to see if we could see Nibiru. And sure enough, we think he caught an image of it. Remember that Soho image that I showed you a few minutes ago?
Uh huh.
With the round orb with the dot in it?
Yeah.
Well, this is what we got through his telescope.
Jeez.
And then you get people sending me random things where oh my gosh, look, something showed up in the photograph, right? And now these are the ones that are okay. So these are the ones that really, for the people that have been looking at this seriously from an astronomer's point of view. Whenever I come up with one of these pictures with this little thing floating around like this, that debris field behind it, like a cross almost, and these are from 2016. Okay, we saw this also a couple years ago, but the point is that this thing is not in a predictable orbit. And every time I show an image like one of these images like this will bring out the trolls like you can't believe. And I've had a couple of the insiders say that if you show this picture, they're going to shut your site down. So I show it all the time because I don't if they're going to shut me down, if they're going to shut my site down for telling the truth, well, what control do I have over that, right?
So, like that size, how big would you say that is?
Well, okay. So inside this circle here is the sun, and the earth is probably, and I don't know what the distance of this object is. This is blown up of this object here, right? So I don't know what the distance of, but it is certainly way larger than earth for sure. Because remember, the sun is just this little circle right here, in here. And the sun is like so many more times larger than the earth. And this thing is behind the sun. Remember the photos I was showing you of Mexico? Here we are corroborating again, right? Now I'm using
Okay.
space imagery. So then I'm getting these blood moons all over the place. This again was a professional photographer that works with me. His name is Questkos, by the way, and I promote his channel all the time. But we've been seeing blood moons, unscheduled blood moons all over the world. What's that all about?
Yeah,
He
what is
took
that
this.
about?
I believe we're starting to see the red iron oxide dust reflecting and refracting off that incoming set of bodies. And then
Interesting.
I don't know if you saw this one. Did you see this one?
No, but that thing looks pissed.
All right, so we know that we're going to see some really, if there indeed is something coming in, and it's going to have all kinds of effects on the Earth. And people ask me all the time, when do you think the effects are going to start? I'm going to say they've started. It's already here. So we're seeing big red clouds coming down from the sky mysteriously, right? We're seeing like this unbelievable red colored cloud in Brazil, okay?
Huh.
Sao Paulo, this is Marie.
And that's not modified in any way.
That is not photoshopped in any way.
Jeez.
This is from California where we got like so we if you read the Hopi prophecies, there's two sightings that you see. First you see the blue Kachina. That's what the Hopi say. And then you'll see the red Kachina. And that's the one that brings the destruction and all that. Well, we think we get pictures all the time of the blue Kachina, and I'll show you another one here that kind of shows this. But this is kind of a weird thing to pick up in your camera when you're taking a photograph,
It almost looks like an aurora of some type.
doesn't it? Now, I just wanted to point this one out because this is some of that background research. So a lot of the people that first come into this, they think that they're the first people that ever thought of it before, and that's common, right? I was that way, and I'm calming way down because I'm meeting a lot of people that have been doing this for a long time, that have been hooked up with people that have been banned and ostracized, and so I got this image from 2012. This is when we theorized this thing was coming in, okay? So just to kind of show, the sun is over here, right? I don't know what this big bubble is. And I've got a body that's kind of close to the sun and definitely within the heliosphere ejecting something. Now, planets don't eject stuff, guys. Okay? They don't. So the question is, what was that in 2012? All right? So I reach out to all my Nibiru wormwood buddies that got beaten down over the last, 10 years and say, just because this, all these date setters dates didn't happen, doesn't mean that the system's not real. That's ridiculous logic, right?
Well,
Because a bunch of people said it was here and it didn't show up, that means it's not coming.
let me jump in real quick, Steve, because you
Sure, I'm
bring up
sorry.
a. No, this is fantastic. I'm absorbing this like a sponge, and I'm sure our listeners are as well. But you bring up a key point, the dates. It started in 2003, and then it went to 2008, 2012, 2013, and it's always May 23rd. And not always, but a lot of times that's the predictive doom date. So my speculation is if Nibiru is going to cause this mass chaos here on planet Earth, that they're using that as a conditioning process in the media. I'm very astute to that. But what is your theory on that? And we'll go from there.
Yeah, okay. So this is where my eschatology comes into play, right? My Christian background. By the way, just as a point of interest, I was ordained in two separate churches. Got kicked out of both of them. Okay.
Nice. You were asking too many questions, huh?
I've always been in trouble. Now, this is a natural calling to me. I love to cause trouble, and I love to tell the truth, right? What was the question again?
Nice. We were talking about, the Nibiru starting in 2003. It's going to hit Earth and the
Yeah.
conditioning process. What's your take on why they started coming out back so many years ago saying Nibiru is going to cause mass chaos?
Huh. Well, there's two ways to look at that because that's been a pretty ostracized community, right? So let's take an example like Marshall Masters, I think is a great example. And I mean all the respect in the world to any people that tried to get into this and learn it. And there's a lot of accusations that go around. You know what? I don't play that game. If you have information that you think is going to help us get to the truth, I'm not going to sit here and look at your laundry. I want to see what you got. Anyway, so you look at Marshall or you look at Nancy Leader and the early kind of adopters of this whole philosophy. And then all of a sudden they talk about that they're getting their information from the Zetas or the Anunnaki or you know what I mean, some spatial group, right?
Right. Summoning
Well,
something.
I'm the weird guy that says I'm getting my information from the Holy Spirit.
Hmm.
So that's my Anunnaki, right?
Nice.
And that Anunnaki tells me that God is in control of everything, and you don't get to tell him when to do stuff and what he's going to do and what he's not going to do. And then, not from a scientific standpoint, we know from looking at the Ferratus, if Carlos of Ferratus, and if anybody doesn't know who that is, go Google Carlos Ferratus. He was an astronomer from South America that was extremely brilliant and actually mapped out what he thought was the orbital diagram back in the 50s and 40s. He was very into this, right? And he actually mentions that when he was observing it or doing his mathematical based on the disturbances or perturbances of the other bodies out there, and he's got a body of work, that it had three different speeds and it was crazy and it didn't operate like other celestial objects. So when I hear an old expert, an old astronomer saying stuff like that, I've got to think that's enough variability that any model would be wrong. Just take mass for example. Well, some people think it's a planet, some people think it's a comet, some people think it's a brown dwarf star. Well, there's a lot of difference between those three things in an astronomical model. You know that, right? So 55 Earth masses versus 10 Earth masses versus 4 Earth masses. So all these models have too many variables and there's too much weirdness with this system. I believe the only people that have the resources to nail it and really understand it are NASA and the United States government and the governments of the world. Those are the only people that have the resources to really nail the dates of when it's going to come and what it's going to do.
Now, do you remember that Navy map that came out many years ago? I'd say at least 20 years ago, that was supposedly a classified map that was showing where the tide was going to go up and basically safe zones in the U.S. and places that many people actually moved to that were in the military when they retired because they thought something bad was going to happen.
Yeah, yeah, I've heard stories, and those stories primarily come from a guy named John Moore.
Hmm.
And was the one that had all those contacts at the senior Navy levels and had all that map and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
And yeah, and yes, I've heard those stories. And the Ozarks is the place where they're moving. And by the way, those aren't the only. John's not the only person who's traded military, people on the inside with that kind of information. So we know that a lot of the high-ranking military already are well set up in the Ozarks, retired military.
And do you think that a lot of these underground bases that have been being built, that Bob Fletcher basically ties to Wormwood or Planet X, do you think that's the main reason they built them, or do you think it was for other purposes?
Well, okay, so for some reason, our government has gotten into continuity of government to almost a sickening level. I don't, if you ever watch what goes on in the government over a period of time, and I used to be in the military, and I worked in one of those underground bases, okay? And that underground base was in Germany, and it could take a 10 kiloton hit, okay? So we had a lot of military assets that were built for, serious thermonuclear war. I mean, that's what
Right.
they were for, right? So during the 40s, 50s, 60s, we were building a lot of those facilities for war, okay? I think something shifted in 80, 82, 83 when Bob says that's when they got that IRAS satellite, that infrared satellite up, and they actually got a chance to see it for the
Okay.
first time and calculate its orbit and all that. And then Reagan, signed some kind of an order according to Bob Fletcher's investigation where he, basically they decided to keep it under wraps. It would cause too much panic. And then that's when he got up in the United Nations and said, if we had a common threat, what would happen? Remember that?
Oh yeah.
The whole deal. So since 82, I think that they've been preparing for it. And I think that's been those big tunnel building projects that we see all over the United States. And I really, truly do believe that's what they're doing.
And there was a news article that came out in the early 80s that talked about Planet X and said NASA found it, and then now I can't even find it anymore. I know they've got hard copies out there. I don't know.
That was that Washington Post article. So, and again, that was a result of the IRAS. And then also, if you're one of the Nibiru people, Dr. Robert Harrington. He was the chief of the Naval Observatory back in the day, back during the 80s. And he actually built an infrared type telescope, I think where did he build that thing? It was in New Zealand or Australia. I don't know which one. Or it could have been even in the South Pole. But he had a lot more going on than a lot of people know. He had already set up an observatory. He was already collecting data. He was ready to present his paper. He was ready to present his findings, and then mysteriously, died of a very fast, moving cancer. So the second thing that you see over the years too in this cover up is a lot of dead astronomers mysteriously dying. Okay. And it's just it's one thing on its own, okay, would not convince anybody, not, and it shouldn't, okay. But when you start to see thing after thing, and what I'm showing you right now here is this is the example. I right when NASA was loading this image up, they were getting ready to do the masking process, and I grabbed it before they could finish the masking process.
Okay.
Yeah, and so this is what's really being seen over there by the sun right now. Okay, and then the image that ends up being the final image from this was just the light rays coming out the side and nothing unusual. Okay, that's unusual. That's weird. You know,
What do you think it is?
I think that it's the other system coming up from behind the sun and it's reacting with the sun. It's just another view of it. And just because it's this big shape, that doesn't mean the object is that large. It just means that the reaction is that large.
And you
That's
say system, you think there's multiple planets?
Indeed I do. And let me show you a couple things, and I'm actually leading right up to that. Here's
Great.
that image that I was telling you about. This is from one of the sky cams down in Australia, and this is a close up. So basically, at this time of the year, it was December 21st. I mean, we were right in the very depth of winter, so we would see the sun would be in its southernmost position, and I saw this on one of the webcams, and that webcam is still looping this image right now, and I saw it live when it happened, and it's never gone off that image. It just locked up.
Hmm.
So I bet this is the one where I said, "Oh my God!" Right? So I said, "Where? Let's see if we can find one in the South Pole." And sure enough, this is the one that I found in the South Pole, the South Davis Station webcam. Do you see anything unusual in this picture?
Well, I do see like a red bubble, reddish bubble.
You
Yep,
see a
there it is.
dot and a
Yep,
red cloud
that's what I'm
around
looking
it?
at.
Yeah. And we've captured hundreds of images, and we have huge discussions in our community about this. And we talk about this triangle that's forming down here. We think it might be some kind of holographic, uh, gig going on. This is from January. Let me show you where we are today with that one, real quick. Can you see my screen?
Yeah, perfectly.
All right, so this is today's Davis station. We still see the two planets. We see the debris field coming in, and we still very faintly see this object, but it's definitely moved and it's not as visible as it was before. So I wanted to kind of make that point as I go back to it again, that we were seeing it really clearly in the winter, deep winter. Now, check this out. So I close in on this on a really bright day one day so I could get a good picture of this triangle. And we think that this could be, I don't know, lens guts or something, could possibly be this little shape. But man, this blew my mind. This is when I said, this is a daytime photograph. And if you looked up from the sky in the South Pole Station, this is what you'd see in the sky. It's
Jeez,
natural light. This is meant to be looking at clouds. That's what it's designed for. That's
that's
shocking stuff.
that's incredible. Yeah, I mean, you can clearly see that red ring, and like you talked earlier with the red moons, the blood moons. Fascinating.
Yeah, yeah. And then we focused in on the triangle really close one day, and we had a big discussion. That was fun.
Let's
And
talk about that for a minute. So, you think that's just an anomaly, or what?
no, I'm pretty convinced that okay. So a couple of months ago, or a couple weeks ago rather, the Russians actually talked about that they were going to send up this big pyramid balloon for some reason.
Okay.
Um, yeah, and I don't know if you saw it, but Dabu 77 had a little story on it. It was an interesting story. It was like, oh, they're going to blow up a big balloon.
Right. I didn't see it. No. I'll have to check it
Okay,
out for sure.
so we think that part of the obfuscation could be that they're building, that they're building devices or constructions. And remember, if I blow up a big piece of plastic in space, right? If I put that out there,
Okay.
remember we're in the vacuum, so once it's up there, it's just going to stay there, right? If I've
Sure.
got if I've got it in a good orbit. So we think they're going to try to obfuscate parts of it, but the other part of this that's been freaking us out is, I mean, is it just me that sees the triangle and the eye coming down on it when you look at that? Is that the symbology of all of the stories of the
Wow.
Freemasons? Is this what they've been hiding from the world? Is that this is coming and they have to prepare for it? I don't know. It's a theory, right?
Dark side of the moon right there.
I'm telling you, so when you start seeing that kind of stuff coming off, again, no photoshopping, no photoshopping.
So,
This is
okay,
exactly the way I saw it.
that line there, how long's that been there in the pyramid thing there?
This
Yep.
Okay, so more of the recent images, it's actually extended down this way now more, and it's extended up in this area now. They've actually seen new clouds up in this area. This is a photo from in January. I'm sorry I don't have one from the last couple weeks that was clear, but
But was that there for longer than a day? That white line there.
absolutely, it's been there, and it's just staying there stationary in space.
And is there another angle that somebody could get on that to verify that's not just from? Because it looks like this picture is going through some type of like window almost.
No, the only reason what I do is I just blew it up on that part of the image. I'll go back to the image you get from Davis. This is what you get from Davis, okay? And I was just closing in on parts of it with these other photographs to get clearer views of it. That's all I was doing.
Okay.
So it's a snip.
But so
But
there's just no. I'm just trying to clarify here. Sorry, I'm not meaning to interrupt, but that
no,
you just can't verify that that's not an anomaly there.
the round circle.
Not the round circle. No, that triangle thing, and then the line in
No,
between it.
no, we can't validate that that's not some kind of a camera anomaly or something like
Okay.
that. So we keep the possibility open that we're completely wrong about that. But it's the other object, and what's funny about the trolls and the shills is they want to talk about the triangle all the time. They never want to talk.
Right.
They never
Right.
want to talk about the whatever is that thing in the middle of the sky.
Diverting attention. Yeah.
They're very good at it. So we don't talk a lot about the triangle. We had one big conversation about it and kind of left it alone because it's too scary, I guess.
That's still pretty cool. It reminds me of that Tom Cruise movie that came out where they had those black cubes that were coming down, sucking the energy source out of the planet, and there was like some artificial intelligence that was running it.
Exactly, right? And then
That damn Grey Goo, man.
yeah, this is something I never saw when I was growing up. I'm 52, okay? And I don't remember the sun poking behind some kind of cloudy big halo and then bursting out on the top of it. Do you?
I've never seen that before, no.
No. Well, we're seeing this all over the world now. We see pictures like this everywhere. So it's not just happening like on a cold day in Texas, right?
Well, I mean, that's probably from all the chemtrails and geoengineering, too. The stuff like the different particulates that they're spraying into the atmosphere.
I believe that as well. I think it's a multiple of factors that you get this kind of light effect.
Sure.
I mean, and then this is a subscriber. I call it the Ken Show, right? And Ken's been watching the Skycam, especially in Australia at Savannah, and he seems to be picking up the same kind of pattern of like Nibiru. I don't know, but he's pretty freaked out by it. So I show his stuff, right?
Yeah.
This is the one that freaks me out more than any of them, because up until a couple weeks ago, we were getting our best pictures of this blue. We're calling it the blue Kachina. Here's that ring we saw in in the South Pole,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then here are two planets behind it, and we were getting these really clear pictures from Norfolk, and it was going all around our community. And then now, unfortunately, that camera's been shut down, so we don't get to see this anymore. But this is what we're seeing, and this is what we think it looks like. So, and then this is the kicker. We just saw another one of these, but this is the one from Hawaii, where a gal said, "Oh, I just thought this is a really cool, sunset." Got out, took the picture with her iPhone 6 with the super high definition, and this is what she saw come out.
Jeez.
And then we just got another photograph like this today, and I was trying to pull it out of my email. I just couldn't find it. But we saw this in Ohio yesterday. Somebody got the same effect. So I don't know what that is. Is that the sun being enveloped by some cloud of dust? I don't know.
It looked like a demonic Mickey Mouse before you zoomed in on it there. Wow. That's incredible.
Yeah. So this is the other thing, is that when I was out there trying to look for information on Nibiru or Planet X or Wormwood, I would always be like, why don't you just show me the stuff? They'd sit there and make me sit and wait for 30 minutes of gobbledygook before they'd show me a picture. On
Right?
my channel, the first thing I talk about is the image of the day, man. Like, this is the one that blew me away. Look at this, everybody. And then that's how I start my shows.
Oh, that's beautiful. I love it. That's the way to go.
Yeah, come on, man. Don't put people want to think about this and talk about it. They don't want to, be strung along, right? Now, I laugh because I'm nervous, and I tell my audience I've got a problem. I'm scared a little bit, and a little freaked out by the stuff I'm seeing, obviously, as a researcher.
Sure.
But at the same time, it creates this excitement or this energy that makes me want to laugh. And it's sick. I know it is. But this is from one of the webcams that we saw in Germany. Again, seeing this interaction apparently between the sun and some other object.
So that one, it almost looks kind of like lens flare or something like that.
Right, and that's why corroboration is so important. So I would say, okay, that's fine, and we'll just skip it then. Okay. Did you ever see this one before?
No.
All right, so this will be the only date I'll talk about on your show tonight. Okay.
The only what?
Date.
Oh, perfect. Okay, sounds great.
Okay.
Never put a date on doom, Steve.
Right, that's what they say. But this is only because this was a neat thing and an interesting little twist on it. So this is a franc that's I think a Swiss franc. It's a concept for the Swiss franc when we go through the global reset. I believe everybody's going to have their own treasuries again, right?
Okay.
So I think the whole
Wow, you
petrodollar.
think it's going to go back to every? You don't think it's going to be one giant Borg giving out credits?
I think that they'll back the currencies, but the currencies will look the same. It will be like it will be a treasury note from the United States. It won't be. They're not going to show their hand and give us a world currency with like a brown eagle on it. You know what I mean?
Right. You don't
They're
think
not
it's going
gonna
to
do
be
that. They're
a
not that stupid, right?
microchip? Okay.
Yeah, that and microchips. Come on, really? I mean, I get it. I get why you think that's the mark of the
We had a
beast. I
guest on the
get it.
show the other day that actually went out and purchased the microchip. He got it implanted in his hand, and he's very happy. He says he goes to the store, he just swipes his hand, and he gets all sorts of interesting people and discussions when he does it. So, I said, man, why would you want to have a cell phone installed into your hand? It's bad enough having it next to your head for 30 seconds if you got to talk to somebody, let alone plugging it into your body.
I know, right?
A
So
cool guy, though. I mean, don't get me wrong. He's a great guy. Just he's a futurist and he's far out there. So,
but if you really think that that guy took the mark of the beast, I think you need to go and maybe take your Prozac, right?
well, whether it's the mark of the beast, I don't know, but he did. I watched him get the chip. It's done by a corporation that it's about the size of rice. You can get one yourself.
But the technology itself is scary, is weird and scary. So let's notice two things about this concept bill, okay? Because I think it's on topic. The first thing you'll notice is that we've got all of these A, B's, and C's up here in circles in the background.
Yeah.
Do you know what that is?
No.
Those are genetic codes.
Huh.
That's just a little snippet of a genome.
Fascinating.
Down here, we have the solar system. Except there's a problem with this solar system picture. This is Saturn, this is Jupiter, here's Earth with the moon, here's Mercury, here's Mars and Venus, right? Here's Mars, here's Venus, right? We can see all these planets, our inner solar system basically, right?
Mm-hmm.
What the hell is this thing? What is that?
Yeah. What is that? It looks like a new orbital path.
Correct. And I got as close as I could on the solar program to see what the date was on this alignment of this bill. And do you know what the date was?
What was the
So I
date?
could the date is March 23rd, 2016.
March 23rd.
That's what's shown on this bill. I'm not saying that's the date.
Didn't I bring that date up just a moment ago?
I think you did. There's a guy named Gil Brazard. You know who he is?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So I have a lot of respect for every researcher, and I want to underscore that. But Gil said that it was going to come in March of this year.
Hmm.
But what happens with him and Bob Fletcher, I've noticed though, and I don't mean this in any disrespect, is that when they don't see it in 2016, they said then it's going to be in 2017, and we got to stop doing that. That's not helping anybody learn about this. Okay.
Right.
Um, let's see what else we can do. Oh yeah, here's my favorite chemtrails.
Oh, look at that. Pentagrams. How nice.
Yeah, that's a good way to freak out Jews, Muslims, and Christians. Okay, it just is. Okay, why do you have to do pentagrams? Can't you just keep with the regular chemtrails? I
Oh,
came out of my house 4 weeks ago, and they had a pentagram in my sky. I was so mad. I was stomping in the house. My wife's like, "What's wrong with you?" I said, "The Luciferians are out at it again." You know?
I see chemtrails all the time, but I have never seen a pentagram chemtrail pattern. That is something new to me.
Yeah, yeah. And I started seeing these come in from subscribers, and I was like, "All right, maybe they were just joking around, right?" It was just kind of like a tongue-in-cheek thing by these pilots or whatever. Until I saw it in my own backyard, and then I was like, "What are they saying? What are they trying to say?" And then it's like they just watch us like ants underneath, just stupid, just not even looking, you know?
Well, and how do you know if it's upside down or not? I'm just kidding.
All right, so here's one of those images that piss NASA off really bad. And this is where I've got the old Nibiru community coming at me, right?
Okay.
And they'll tell me when I have an image. This was actually one of my partners went in and filled all the stars in for me, and showed me that there were no constellations or anything for this object right here. Then I had a picture of the Nibiru system or one of its bodies. It's just a recent one. This is from 312.
Okay. Jeez, that's huge.
Yeah, it is huge. So again, remember that's the size of the sun right there. That little dot. Yeah, the trolls and the debunkers, they don't like this one at all, and you'll never see them comment on it, by the way.
Well,
And I've been warned. I've been warned that this will get me shut down by showing this one. So just so you know.
how long have you been showing it?
Every time I get one like this, I put it up as quick as I can. Because again, what I did was what I saw happening with the site was there was a certain critical mass that I got to where they couldn't just shut me down. I don't think, but I think they will if I get too close to it.
You know, but there's so much out there now where they're basically letting people know that they've found it and it's hitting the mainstream news outlets, but they're saying it in a way that's, I guess you could say, pacifying the masses. Oh, well, yes, we found it, but it's not going to be here for another 50 years. Oh, it's 36,000 years, not 3,600 years. You know, it's so what's the deal with that?
All right. So, I don't think we, again, if unless you're in the government or unless you're in some very high end astronomy, academia, that kind of thing, we won't know how to calculate the movement of this thing or anything. We just don't have the right tools to do it. Remember that the only reason that we're seeing it visible here, because we know that it doesn't emit its own light, is because the sun is illuminating it. So, like, I love the guys that come out with their welder's glass and say, "I can't see anything." Well, no, it's an object that doesn't illuminate unless the sun illuminates off it. What makes you think you're going to see it with a welding glasses?
Well, here's another thing too, that if you were to look at this same image a year ago, would that have been close to that vicinity?
No, it wasn't present in the photos from a year ago. And we always do cross check with a year ago.
So that's a way that you could find out how fast that thing's moving. Is you could compare it to, a week ago, a month ago, right?
Yeah, and we are working on this, right? So I'll give you an example of a project we're working on right now. Have you been keeping up with the number of asteroids that we've been discovering and then seeing like in the same day?
No, I haven't. Have you?
Oh, absolutely. In fact, can I take you to that site real quick?
Let's go. Perfect.
Let me get it up here. So let's go to the NRO near close approaches. So the other thing we'd expect to see with a system like this, again, in that spirit of corroboration, we would expect to see debris like asteroids and other materials, And if you go to, this is from the last 2 days, right? So these are the ones that already have gone by. And what you see over here, this is the distance in lunar distances. That means 1 LD would be the distance between the Earth and the Moon. Anything that's under like 10 is called a near Earth object. I mean, it's really close, right?
Okay.
We have had just in the last couple of days 8 near Earth objects that were only discovered in the last 3 months that we never even knew existed. Now check this out. Here is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Those are all discovered in 2016. Look at this one.
Jeez.
Now check this out. I'm going to that. Oh, they blocked me from this site. I don't have my proxy thing on. I'm blocked.
What? They blocked
Yeah.
you?
Oh, I'm absolutely blocked. I have to put a proxy filter on to get to any of these sites.
Unbelievable.
Oh, I am blacklisted. Absolutely.
You're
So if
blacklisted from NASA.gov.
Yeah, if I don't have my proxy filter on, it's not all the time, but just now, for example, it won't let me go look at the orbital diagram right now because I have to turn my proxy filter on, and I don't want to risk our interview. So, but anyway, good enough to say that go look at it yourself. So my question is, where are all these asteroids and bodies predominantly coming from that we're just seeing now for the first time in the last 3 months, right? And these guys are pretty good at what they do. Okay, they've got radar and all kinds of crazy stuff to do, right?
I have noticed a lot of different news articles saying that we're not prepared for asteroid. There has been a lot of articles that I've noticed. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's a lot of buzz in the Nibiru wormwood, community because we expect to see this. So one of my projects right now, I've got an engineer that took the project of actually tracking the origin of all these 2016 asteroids to see if they're normal Jupiter asteroids, because most of our asteroids are things that get knocked out of the orbit or around Jupiter. That's where we get most of our traffic, or is it coming from something else? So I'm waiting for the results on that right now.
Now, if you compared this chart to last year, the year before, what would the statistics be as far as close, near misses?
Yeah, I didn't do a statistical study on it, but if I'm listening to BP Earthwatch, I think he said this is very uncommon, and he's probably one of the people that have watched this chart more than ever anybody. And when he came on to show this, and then look at a couple of the comments that are coming towards us in the next couple of days, he was very adamant that this is unusual. So that's the anecdote I could tell you. I didn't do a study of it.
So, and that seems, that's very interesting. I'd be surprised if, remember the Star Wars program that they started working on in the 80s and then it went real hush hush?
Yeah.
Now, I wonder if they did that to create something for possible asteroids that it could kind of steer them off or, blow them up before they got too close to Earth. I don't know.
Without a doubt, they were doing that. Absolutely. Now, what I want to show you here, this is one that just, oh my gosh, this just freaks me out because it's got elements of everything that we've talked about. So here's it's a little webcam in Pompano Beach, Florida from March 1st. Now watch this. So first we see this little object show up right here.
Yep.
Right? Okay, nice and clear, right? See it?
Yeah, it looks great. Absolutely.
Same one that we've been pretty much seeing. I would say that it corroborates pretty good with the ones that we've been seeing before. Now watch the refraction or the reflection that comes up off this thing. Oops, let me get back a little bit here.
Now, I was seeing something coming from the right, too. Is that is that a lens flare?
Yep, I'm going to stop it right there. So what we saw was what's happening is the light's refracting from that object back there, and it's refracting off of the lens of this lens. And I'm going to show you a refraction in a second, so you can see what I'm talking about. Because we've seen this many, many times. I believe that that's just a reflection of the object. That's what it looks like in space.
Okay.
So again, it's just another piece of the puzzle. It's not everything, but again, when you see stuff like that, it just, it's like, what? Right?
Absolutely.
What was that?
Definitely.
And so again, like I said, we have stuff coming in from all over the world,
Now, let me ask you this too. When you said you followed Sitchin's work, Zecharia Sitchin, do you think that when he talked about the Anunnaki, do you feel that that's got some truth and merit to it? And do you feel that if this system come back towards Earth close enough, do you think that there might be some type of extraterrestrial presence combined with that?
I do. Yeah, I really do. I honestly do. And in the Christian traditions, we would call that, we would go back to Genesis chapter 6. And, if you're serious about theology and you want to talk about serious theology with me, it's a hobby of mine. I love it. There's some weird stuff in the Bible, right?
Absolutely.
And you would say to me, I would say something like to you, a fundamentalist Christian, I might say, you don't think there's aliens. No, we don't think there's aliens. And I would say, well, then where did God come from? He didn't come from Earth, right?
Right.
Yeah. Well, doesn't that mean that God's an alien? Okay. Well, we also see in Genesis chapter 6 this group called the Watchers. And there were 200 of them in the book of Enoch. And these were sentient, conscious beings. in our traditions, okay, in the Judeo-Christian view, okay,
Right.
and in our eschatology, in our history, and we talk about them, coming and habitating with humans and taking human wives and procreating and creating hybrid races of people. That's all in my Bible, man. That's in a Christian's Bible. The same people that go to the Baptist or Pentecostal or Catholic church on Sunday, they just don't know what's in there.
Right.
And if I was to share that stuff with you, it's congruent with somebody saying the Anunnaki. Well, is there anything to say that the Anunnaki and the Watchers of the Christian or Jewish Bible aren't the same exact beings?
I mean, it's
I
certainly
don't
a way
know.
to look at it. Sure.
Well, why don't we corroborate instead of oppose each other, right? We're humans, we're limited. So let's assume that these things are watchers and let's assume that they're angels, okay, for the Christian benefit, right?
Sure.
Well, that means that they've been around for a long time and they're super wise and they're super smart and they're probably got a lot of capabilities that we can't even begin to understand, right?
Mm-hmm.
Similarly, if I take the evolutionary view, and these are just the Anunnaki were this race that developed before the humans did, and then they evolved us through a hybridization program. It's a pretty parallel story, but they'd still have great capabilities. They'd still be way beyond any human beings, technology, et cetera, right? So in
Sure.
either case, we're dealing with an alien entity that's a lot smarter and brighter and knowledgeable than we are, right? In those traditions, I say. I'm not saying they're fact, right?
Sure. Well, and
But when
another
you
thing too is there's a lot of speculation that many of the, aristocrats, very elite, rich people, and certain bloodlines go all the way back to the pharaohs of Egypt, and before that, some people speculate that they're the offspring of different fallen angels or the Anunnaki or
right,
different, almost like a different race, a different sentient being. And would you correlate with that as well?
I would, and okay. So have you ever heard of a gal named Karen Hughes?
Absolutely.
Okay, so Karen, you remember her story, right? Where and she doesn't mention it much. She's more focused on the global reset and trying to help the good guys win. I really believe she is. A lot of people will call her a shill. I don't. Anybody that tries to stand up for truth, do you ever notice there's always a faction that says that they're with the man?
Yeah, every time.
It's like, okay, so you can't win in this game, right? There's no way to win.
Not on
So if
the
I come
internet.
out and tell the truth, you're going to call me a shill for the government. And I'm sick of it. Let's just cooperate.
Well, I mean,
Yeah,
if you've got an opinion, then yeah, you're a shill.
automatically. But anyway, Karen talks about the elongated skull individual that she met at the Vatican. Do you remember that story?
Refresh my memory, please.
So she was part of some high level IMF lawyering, right? And there was some accounting discrepancies or whatever, and the Vatican was somehow involved in, or their accounting group or whatever, it had something to do with an IMF transaction. And one of the people that showed up in one of these high level secret meetings was a guy with a huge, big, elongated skull. That's what she said. A
Fascinating.
different, a different species of human.
Well, and that would correlate with many of the skulls that have been found, from old archaeological sites with these elongated skulls. Some people think that many of them are actually because they created that deformation. Their family members did because they were trying to mimic another sentient being. So that's interesting.
Possible, right? I mean, but again, we have very limited facts. We find the skulls, right? Or we have a testimony from a Karen Hughes that seems to be a very credible witness, right? But I've never seen a guy with an elongated skull, okay? But again, there's so much evidence that points towards this. Um, I mean, just worldwide conspiracy, I guess you'd say. And I think that part of these secret societies and part of the knowledge, the secret occulted knowledge called the occult, I think is this subject. I think that they've known about it for centuries. I think they've planned around it for centuries. And the level of planning and the level of subterfuge that goes on in the world that we are born into, I've found in the last 10 years, is staggering. It's staggering. And when you start to get above it a little bit and you start to wake up a little bit to the fact that maybe you haven't heard the truth your whole life, or you wake up to an interesting subject like this, like a potential cataclysmic event that nobody's telling us about, right? It can drive you crazy. It can drive you nuts. And so what I tell people is you also have to just kind of keep a little bit of it. You know, we don't have any control over it either. So I'm interested as a scientist. I'm interested in it as a theologian. I'm concerned about many people's lives. I'm concerned about what's going to happen to people on the coast and all that. So what can I do, right? The only thing I can do is what I'm doing. And that is, here's what I'm seeing. Here's what my subscribers are seeing. Here's some theories to think about. Maybe you should get ready to like run. Maybe you should have some food and water ready. Maybe you should be ready for, a situation where we're not going to have power for a couple months, right? Maybe you should have, just basic common sense stuff, man. That's what I'm trying to tell people. If you live anywhere in the United States, hurricane country, coastal country, earthquake country in California, it's just common sense to have an emergency bug out bag. It's just common sense to have 3 weeks worth of water and food. So if I'm telling people that I think this is coming and you should prepare, and the worst thing that happens is that I've got a bunch of people with extra survival supplies in their basement, no big deal, right? Who cares? Let us have our Nibiru fun, okay? But right, if I'm right, and my community is right about this, and we're being lied to about this, you know, that's a whole different discussion, isn't it?
Well,
Why
it's
would they lie to us about that if that's the case? What possible reason could you have for covering this up since 1983? Why? You can't all of a sudden say, okay, we see this thing coming in. We're going to relocate everybody 200 miles in from the coast. We're going to get some shelters ready for everybody to go into when it comes through. We'll have food for everybody. They had since 1983 to prepare, as far as I can tell. Why didn't they? Why hasn't this been the worldwide thing? If it's true, right?
well,
That's some dastardly stuff we're talking about. That means they're intentionally killing people.
Well, let's think about it. If you had the keys to the kingdom and you had a mindset of you wanted no more than 500 million people on the planet, there's way too many people out there, yet you needed them because you wanted to create these amazing underground structures for your survival, and you needed to obtain enough energy and resources and opportunities for continuation of life for you and the people that you want to help reseed the population, it makes perfect sense. And so what do? Well, let's destroy the planet as much as we can, is what they're thinking in their minds, right? With all the fracking and all the nuclear reactors next to fault lines and the chemtrails and the poisoning of foods and medicines and vaccines. And it just seems like they're trying to create this society of just a retard society that can't even take care of themselves, yet some of them are so bright and so intelligent, but because they've got autism, they can barely function in a regular society. It's like we live in the Twilight Zone. It's absolutely horrific.
Yeah, you talk about dystopian, right? I mean, um, this reminds me of science fiction I read when I was a child. It really does. I used to be big into science fiction. Okay, when I was a kid. Surprise, surprise, right? When there's those clouds again, man. I mean, just crazy. So we're back. Those are the images that I wanted to show you, and I thought that would just kind of set a nice conversation. I literally have tens of thousands of photographs, and I only am able to show maybe 1% of the collection right now. That's all the time I have to do. So I pick the best ones I can find, and I try to put up a show every day or every other day. And the other thing that I've noticed about this channel that's interesting is that, and the reason I leave the comments open in spite of the shills and the trolls, is because I'm seeing a lot of people talk to each other that would never have met each other any other way, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm pretty sure we'll get a couple marriages out of this, and what else, right?
The Nibiru dating service.
I know, right? So let's talk about what's going to happen after this for a second, can we?
That'd be great.
So there's a lot of theories, but I have one theory, and I think this is a very, very core idea. I believe they're preparing to take over the world after this happens. The Phoenix idea, right? They want the Earth to go just, as much destruction as possible to happen, so that there's complete reliance on the emerging government that comes out of the hole, right? So these guys come out of the hole with all their guns and tanks and everything, and the population is completely shocked and bewildered. I mean, that's the opportunity to take control of the world right there, right? If you're going to take control of a big part of the world, that's the time to do it, right? So I believe that's their plan. I believe that their whole goal is to execute all these crazy conspiratorial theories, but in the wake of a disaster like this. So they don't want us to know about it because then we won't be able to be controlled when it happens.
Well, and
That's what
another
I'm saying.
thing, another sorry to interrupt here. I mean, I was just going to say the coast, people that are, going to be on the East Coast, West Coast, and places that there's not a very high elevation. I mean, they're probably going to be affected the most, and that's where the majority of people reside.
In the United States, yes, correctly, and in the world, right? We know that the biggest concentration of human population is on coastlines. Period. No disputing that fact. So where do I live? Well, I live in the middle of the United States, right in the middle of the Cascadia Plate at 1,400 feet with all the fresh water I can drink. That's the best I think you can do. And then our plan is to, if and when this goes down, then we will try our best to be a refugee center. That's our plan. That's what we're going to do.
Now, let me
Because
ask you
I've got
this.
the property to do it, so I'm going to try.
How bad do you think it's going to get?
I think that's going to depend on where you live in the earth. Okay, so and again, we don't know what the dynamics are. It seems like though the machine leaks out all the time that North America is going to get its butt kicked. Okay, I don't know if you've noticed that about this. It seems like everybody thinks the United States is going to get its butt kicked. You notice that?
Yeah, absolutely.
So they think that the Mississippi
Even the
River.
even the media pushes it, like the movie Knowing in 2012. Well, China's okay, but America just gets blown to shit.
Yeah, yeah. What's up with that? I mean, it's like in the movies. Like, do you ever notice that it's always New York that gets wiped out in the movie?
Now it's
Why can't it be
DC,
like Beijing once in a while? You know,
right?
it's almost like they're trying to condition us for the United States to be a smoking hole. You know what I mean?
They literally are, absolutely.
You know, and it freaks me out a little. You know, it freaks me out a little. And again, I don't think that I don't think that again, we're born into this thing, man. We wake up to it. Some of us wake up in the Matrix and, go and, hang out with Neo, but very few of us do, right? And so the other thing I tell people that if you wake up to something like this and you start to learn it, just calm down a second, okay? Don't go tell everybody you just learned this. Let it soak in a little bit and understand that you had to overcome a lot of cognitive dissonance to see this, so why wouldn't somebody else have it too, right? So I get so many people that will look at my channel and they'll write me and they'll say, I tried to tell everybody in my family about it and they all think I'm crazy. Yeah, because they haven't been led up to this point like you were, okay?
Right.
You're on like Z in the alphabet and they're like still on B or C and you're coming at them with like all this stuff that they've never heard. Yeah, people are going to freak out when they hear about it. Right. I get it. And the first reaction to anything like this, it's like a cancer diagnosis, right? Or it's like, you're going to die or whatever, right? You're seeing your imminent mortality right here, okay, potentially, right? Now we're getting into the concept of grief. So you have to go through a grief process. Yes, the world isn't this stable, safe little cocoon that you thought it was, okay? That's a hard thing to accept. But that's what this thing spells, that you might not know what's going to happen every day. And so the benefit of seeing something like this, in my opinion, is that it should teach us to, when I go to the coffee store tomorrow, if we're blessed enough to have one tomorrow, right? I really enjoy that cup of coffee right now. I really do. Because that might be the last one I ever get. Okay? So that's, if we can take that kind of a message away from this and say, yeah, we're going to be prepared. We're going to do the best we can. Yeah, we don't have the government working for us. There's probably going to be a lot of upside down stuff. But let's take the moments that we have left, if this is truly going to come upon us, and enjoy each other. Enjoy, no more arguing, man. There's no time for arguing anymore. Okay? There's no time for fighting anymore. There's no time for hating no more. Okay, let's use it as an excuse to be nice to each other. How's that?
Nice. I got to
Okay.
tell you, you're bringing a lot of good stuff to the table, and I like how you say, "Hey, if you've just discovered this and it freaks you out, just relax, take a step back. Don't go out and blast to everybody that there's Nibiru out in the skies, because there's another way to kind of digest it and then bring it out to them. I think it'll be a lot more effective. So I'm glad you bring that up.
Well, and then you have to take the theoretical point of view that if I and everybody, my family knows, right, that I do this. I mean, how can I avoid it now? This is I have two jobs. I have this job and my cybersecurity job, and they know I do it. But guess who they're going to come to when all of a sudden, we have a heavy asteroid day, and 4 or 5 areas got hit in the Earth. Who do you think they're going to go to? Do you think they're going to go to the guy that's been trolling you?
Of course not.
D5 on CR is, do you think they're going to go to him? No, they're going to come to me and they're going to say, Steve, what's going on? And I'm going to tell them. So they don't have to freak out and be under control when, the rats come out of their hole.
Hmm.
You've got to be prepared mentally for what's going to happen, I believe, in this situation, not so that you can be fear mongering and fear porning and all that, just to say that, you know what, I don't care if this is coming in. I'm not going to let this be an excuse for them to take control of me. And you can decide that right now, if that's what's going to happen, or anybody for that matter, right? And check me out, man. You know what? You can come on to my videos, and what you're going to see from video 1 to video 70 now I'm on, I can't believe that, um, is you're going to see a guy growing in his knowledge of this and waking up over the last 4 months. Like my first videos are me smoking a chain smoking cigarettes in front of my computer, going, "Oh my God, can you see this with me on the computer screen with me right now?" That was my first show. Okay, I went from that to now I'm like got testimony and I've got an order of events, and we kind of know what we're going to do and what we're going to talk about. You know what I mean? But that first one, man, I was freaking out. I was looking at that red dot down in Australia, and then it just freaked me out that night, man. And I couldn't go to sleep. It was crazy, man. So yeah, you got to learn to settle down, because panicking and fear is not going to help anybody.
The
Just
Steve Olson Show.
the Steve Olson show. And you know what? The other thing is, stop being freaking weird, man. Everybody out there, okay? I'm just a layman. I'm just a dude, right? You are just dudes and dudesses out there, and we're trying to learn about this event. Just hold down the weirdness, okay? This is not your excuse to give me your dissertation on Luciferianism, okay? I really don't want to hear that, okay? Seriously, I got people sending me books on ancient Judaic mystical, spell casting. Seriously, man, I don't want that stuff. I'm trying to learn about this event practically and in a way that hopefully comforts people, that that we can make it through it, and we will survive.
you know,
We'll survive.
Steve, you should take that as a compliment, though, because people that are reaching out to you like that, trying to send you that stuff, they're probably genuinely trying to give something back to you, because you probably touched them in a way and woke them up in certain ways. But I totally like how you say it, man. It's interesting because getting on the internet, and when you have so many people following you and the opportunity to get as many views as you have, there's going to be some very eclectic individuals, I'm sure, that send you stuff that you don't want anything to do with.
No, and it's not. I didn't mean to be insulting about it, but the subject matter that I want to talk about, and the reason why I want to stay focused on it, we'll tangentialize once, and we'll go off on a tangent and talk about something. But for the most part, I'm probably not going to argue for or against any specific like theology or anything like that. I'll say I'm
Right.
Christian. I'll say things like, "Hey, Jesus will help you out if you need him." I'll say stuff like that, but I don't want to get into a theological debate with anybody on this. This is really a human species issue.
You can never win those anyway.
No, you can't. And really, this is about everybody now. This is going to affect everybody on the earth. So really, I don't think we have time for that anymore. Really. You don't think that there's going to be a Buddhist and a Muslim coming across my farm during the refugee time, if and when this happens? Get over it, man. They're going to need to help me, and I'm going to have to help them when it happens. You know, the Buddhists have a beautiful way of looking at this. Have you ever heard about how the Buddhists look at Armageddon?
No.
Oh, you got to go look this stuff up. Buddhists are the most beautiful because they believe that it's necessary from time to time for the universe to expel evil in a very dramatic way, and they're very calm about it. So if you're really with a true Buddhist and you say, "Oh my God, it's Armageddon," then they'll just fold their hands and say, "Excellent," and I'll be like, "Excellent? What do you mean?" It's an opportunity for the universe to purge evil. That's what they think. That's also what the Hindus think. That's what Shiva is, right? I wonder if Shiva isn't just a type and a shadow of this solar system coming through, and that kind of destruction that happens. That Shiva's the destroyer, right? And
Uh-huh.
then Krishna comes back and starts to rebuild, and Vishnu starts to rebuild in that whole cycle, that the Hindus have.
Sure.
It really seems to be the same pattern as this, right? They say the last time that this came through 12,000, well, let's say it's the 12,500 year ago model, right, of Graham Hancock. He said that's the last time we had a cataclysm like that.
Okay.
And they also record, which is kind of interesting, that after the event had happened, there was a time of great prosperity, and everything came back to normal, and everything came back twice as good as it was before. For a period of time, it was almost like what the Bible would describe as the millennium, if you've ever studied the Bible. That millennium, 1,000 years of peace, or whatever they call, right? Or the
Sure.
Garden of Eden typology, right? Is that what happened? Was that we had this big flood, and then who knows, right? The point I'm trying to make is that there's a type and shadow in almost every religious text of these cataclysms that happen, be it Shiva or the Hopi Indians with their Kachinas or the Christians with the Book of Revelation, right? What I'm trying to say is I think the human race is smarter, and we've been through this before. I don't think this is the first time we've been through this. Okay? I just don't. I think it's a big reset for the human race every 3,600 years or 12,000 years or whatever it is. I believe that we get knocked on our ass and we have to get off our ass, and it takes us probably a couple thousand years just to get oriented again, right? So I don't know. You know, just there's a lot of interesting places it can go. But one thing I do not want to have happen to people is that people with more power and ammunition and guns come out of their holes and we're vulnerable to them. That's what I don't want to have happen, you know?
You mean like the survival guys coming out going, man, where are
Not the
they?
survival guys. I'm not worried about the preppers. I'm worried about the guys that build the big holes,
Oh, you're
right?
okay.
So what was Fletcher saying? They have tanks and ships and guns and bulldozers and survival supplies. So they're intending on coming out of that hole. They're not going to stay down there. They're going to come out with their army. That's what
Oh,
I believe. I believe they're coming up back out of the hole to conquer.
certainly. And I mean, not only that, but now with all the chemtrails and the possible metal particulates that could be in just about everybody with certain high frequencies from cell phone towers and other RFID type, I guess you could say, emitters. Who knows what they could do? The stuff that we know about is probably 30, 40, 50 years old in technology. So it's very interesting. And it will be fascinating to see what happens. Now, also, do you think that it's affecting like the whole solar system as well, other planets, and it's not just going to affect this path, but then possibly, the moon and get knocked off axis as well?
Absolutely right. So we already know that the outer planets have been heating up. That's been pretty common knowledge now for the last 10 years that we've been having perturbations, heating up planets. Um, I think Zeta Talk just put up an article a couple days ago. And again, Nancy was wrong. Okay. She said a date in 2003 or 2012 or whatever. Who cares if she was wrong about the date? She's got a lot of good data. And one of the things that she came up with just recently was they did an analysis of where the moon and the sun should be, just basic astronomy, right? And they claim that the moon is 22 degrees off of its normal course. Well, of course, I'm going to go validate that before I go on my channel and talk about it. But that's the kind of research that means something, because then we can say, okay, why is the moon 22 degrees off if I can validate that, right? Um, and we have to work together and stop picking on each other all the time, you know? Nancy, I forgive you. You were wrong. 2003, 2012. Stop setting dates. That's
It,
my advice to everybody.
yeah, don't put a date on doom like that because it really never pans out, and then they can kind of use that against you, you know. So unless you really feel in your heart of hearts it's the right thing to do, and then go ahead.
Well, I had a guest on my show, David Mead, and he wrote a book about Arrival 2017 or something like that. And I was a little reluctant to have him on, but he had a really cool angle and some really cool research to share. So I felt it was worth the risk of having him on there. And I tried to avoid being the one to own that date, but no matter what I do, that's going to stick to me now. So because I had David Mead on and he said it was going to be in 2017, I guess they're going to think I said it, but I didn't, for the record.
Yeah,
I was just listening to David, you know?
right.
So,
Yeah, we talked to David too here at the Leak Project. Real nice guy. Seems very articulate, and it went very smooth. So there's so
yeah,
much
I enjoyed
information
it.
out there now. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So that's kind of what we're up to. And now the most recent thing, I'll just kind of pop this in there, and maybe we can come to a close or whatever you'd like to do. But um, so we're trying to do this balloon project, right? And I'll have another video up about it, but we're going to try to do our own near space mission here pretty soon at WSL. So the one thing you'll see me, the only time you'll see me asking for money on the channel is if I'm trying to fund a project. And right now I'm trying to fund this balloon project because we're going to try to get as many balloons up as we can. And we found a vendor that will sell the balloons to us for $700 for all the setup, which is the altimeter, the balloon, all that. And I've already recruited teams in South